On this podcast, we will talk about the tools we have used in order to remind us who and what we are.
We will talk about the spiritual technologies that bring us back to the knowing that we are sovereign.
That bring us back to God. The only actual advice you will get on this podcast is to consult within.
The rest is all the things that happen when you do it.
My name is Jasai.
And my name is Stori.
And this is Sovereign You. Hey, girl.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you this week? Are you feeling a little more comfortable in the podcast chair, in the conversation seat?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am.
I was on the internet and I came across a meme. I try not to come across too many memes because that means I'm not working. But I did come across a meme, and it was the idea of not waiting for things to be perfect, but deciding like full out to just do them wrong until you can get them right. And I love that as an idea because it feels like my kind of personality. But when I think about you, I wonder what your inclination there is. I was going to send it to you, but I don't know. I think that particularly for you, I try not to send you things that are going to make you overthink about it. But I like that as an idea. I like flow as an idea and getting a thing wrong. And because your personality is different than that, I wonder what your thoughts are on doing a thing, maybe not with all the instruction, maybe not quite the perfect way the first time, but just diving in and see what it do.
I feel like I do that a lot.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. I feel like anytime you start anything new, that's kind of a part of the process. So, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't really know.
How
what about
been?
you? How do you feel?
Because that's a part of my thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just willing to dive in and see. I'm a curious person, so I'm willing to dive in and see what something is like. I feel like also I have enough leeway. I have enough mental leeway, and enough material leeway to like try a thing and be like, oh, that didn't go quite the way I thought it was going to go, but I did learn something. And because we are talking about education and learning today, learning styles are something that interests me. I feel like ours are a bit different.
Yeah.
And so that was on my mind. You were on my mind when I saw that.
Nice. Okay. So
It's fine. It's really fine.
how are you doing?
I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm studying.
Mm-hmm.
I am studying, and I'm calling it studying because it feels fun to me. I'm a person that likes school, learning, the idea of that. Because I did not go to college, I didn't get the experience, sort of in my body, like what I feel when I think about a really serious studying college student, like somebody who's really in the game, loving what they do. I didn't have that experience in life. And so I am excited about who I'm calling my teachers, the people whose ideas are sort of doing a round robin in my head about all kinds of things from archaeology and meditation to Zen and mescaline. So those are some of the things that are showing up in what I'm studying right now.
I feel like I'm familiar with everything except for mescaline. What is that?
Mescaline is, it's a mushroom. Is it a mushroom? It is. So This Is Your Mind on Plants is by Michael Pollan, and he talks about the plants of poppy, coffee beans, and mescaline, and how people's brains are impacted by those three substances, mescaline being the mushroom. It's like a psychedelic mushroom.
Okay, cool.
I'm into it.
Nice, nice.
So today's episode is about education, and particularly about the importance or viability of what the culture sort of understands as formal education, how we have navigated or not navigated that space, and and why. So, um, you have a particular story about education and how you've navigated that might be interesting for people to tap into.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you share that?
I would just say from my experience, are we just addressing an overall conversation about?
Yeah, you're just talking about what you've done with education in your life, how you've held that, how you've navigated that, similarly or differently than the wider world, than your peers.
Okay, so in my opinion, I think that society deems an appropriate form of education being at least a basic K through 12. And then for people who are looking for long term careers, then it would be secondary education, which would include going to college. Um, but for me, I think that depending on what your focus is and depending on what you're already inclined to follow and to apply your effort towards, that's what really tells whether or not you need to go to college. Because I feel like K through 12, it really teaches you reading, writing, and arithmetic, which is super important. And I think that that's those skills you can take into any line of work in life. But then if you want to become a doctor or a lawyer or anything that requires a higher education, then yeah, go to college. But I don't think all career paths require you to go to college.
Do you think the culture thinks that?
I think that people have a limited way of thinking when it comes to education because so many different ideas of proper education are fed to us. So I feel like you can be what it means to be educated is the ability to learn and to possess knowledge. And so that can happen in a lot of different places outside of like the formal education system. So no.
For sure. My relationship to education is one that I actually don't think about often, probably because I'm 47 and I'm off that. But I am always being educated. I am always educating myself, which I think is the sort of wider definition is the ability to learn. And then interest in education then for me seems like the interest in or the willingness to learn, to be engaged intentionally, certainly past what we would call sort of the formal parochial education. But I was talking to a young woman right around the beach party time about how I got here. You know, I think that people probably imagine, maybe they imagine that there is some sort of educating that one has had if they are running a business like Alio. I don't know what people imagine. We don't talk a lot about education in this community, but I know a lot of our clients are college educated. People who are in careers that are either closely related or not at all related to what they studied in college, but the college piece seemed to be prime. Like, I got to do that first, and then whatever's going to come next will come out of that. And because I did not have that experience, how I learn and why I learn, I think is quite a bit different. The question of why people learn or don't learn is really an interesting one for me. But I wonder why you learn, why you're always having ideas and things you share. Why are you doing that? Why are you engaging the space of learning in the way that you are? And how does that relate to how you relate to your larger education?
I would say that I learn because I can. You know, I have the ability to.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy it, and I love having conversations with people who understand the same things that I do. But I just have like a very simple love for learning. There's like nothing really grand about why I learn or why I like to come into new information. It's just because I literally can.
and that feels simplified. Then I wonder why the wider world thinks education is. So if you can be cavalier about it in that way, because it feels like that's a thing you could vibe to or not. I wonder what you think is the reason that the world makes such a big deal of a formalized education, if it has that much flow in it.
I would say that, just from my own personal opinion, our current society is built on career-based individuals. And so if that's not perpetuated, then people would just do whatever is natural to them. And there are some people who are not interested in learning, and there are some people that are. But I think that also, to that point, I think that education is important to the current social structure, because without it, there aren't many jobs you could get. And then if you don't have a job, you can't really support yourself. But I'm more so interested. So much of my learning does have to do with the business, but a lot of it doesn't. It's just information, things that interest me. How do you feel about secondary education, college, and do you think it's necessary to become a successful member of society?
Well, being absolutely inside of the boat of someone who did not participate in that, in any significant way, I'd certainly know that it's not required, or even a significant portion of what it takes to become a productive member of society. But that's the formalized idea of education. You do have to be consistently learning, I think, in order to do well in your life. I don't care if it's learning, educating yourself on how to prepare better food for your family, or educating yourself about how to be more efficient in your finances. I think that if you're not learning something, if you're not advancing in how you understand you and the world around you, I feel like life gets a little tight. I don't think you need to be a part of an institution for that. I know that you don't need to be a part of an institution for that. But the ability and the willingness to see where you can grow, basically, where can I learn more in order to become more, is certainly feels essential to my life. And what about you? Where are you on the necessity of? I feel like I could guess about formal education, but the necessity of learning.
So for me, I don't necessarily think that formal education, outside of K through 12, I think K through 12 is important, unless you have the opportunity to homeschool. But again, reading, writing, and arithmetic would be like the things that you should focus on. But I would say that as it pertains to college, once I decided that I would work for a LIO, I just knew that most colleges aren't necessarily going to be teaching what I was going to learn. And even if they were, that wasn't like a thought in my mind. I wasn't going to think of courses that could teach me about spirituality, or courses that could teach me about business. And even when I did take a business class, they were just teaching me everything. I was in Business 101. They were just teaching me everything I was already doing. And so that kind of felt like a waste of time. I realized that, I could learn things experientially in the same way that I could read them in a book.
How did you decide when and how? What prompted you to make a decision, whatever that was, about college? What is that? What is the story of that?
Well, when I was in high school, I was taking I think it was I can't remember if it was for like an AP test or if it was just for a test that wraps up the year. I mean, it's almost 3 years ago now, so I don't really remember. But I was taking an essay writing class. We were writing essays to get into college, our college acceptance, not letter, but the essay that you write to the colleges. And one of my favorite teachers, Mr. Wilf, who interestingly enough studied philosophy, and I think philosophy is quite close to spirituality in a way that not to extrapolate on your experience, but you're very creative with what's in front of you, where a lot of people are surface level. This is what's happening. There's nothing else to it, if you will.
I see.
So in that way, we connected, I feel like. And in the beginning of the class, he asked everybody to make sure that their intentions for applying to college were aligned with the things that they were already interested in currently. And so from there, I just decided that, I was doing something already that I was interested in that I didn't necessarily think needed college education. And because I trusted his, discernment and his advice to just continue what it is that you're already doing, that's what I did. So I just decided not to go to college, and I decided to work with Elio because that was something I was already doing that I loved.
And it sounds easy when you say it now, when you relay it. I do know that it wasn't an easy decision to live in after you made it. How did you sort of stay in that decision when it wasn't super, super comfortable?
I feel like even now, you know what I'm saying? Like if I see somebody's, I think that if you can get caught in comparison and you think that, oh, maybe if I would have done this, or maybe if I would have done that, there's still, a feeling of doubt, if you will, if I let myself go there. But I feel like initially when the doubt was just super strong, I was wearing beads at the time. I cut all my beads off. And I just stayed with it, even if it made me feel uncomfortable, or even if it made me feel like, because I was already programmed and under the disposition that college was the right thing for you to do to be successful. Even if I had the feelings of, man, I should have went to college, I just overrode those feelings and just went with whatever I was doing. And I think that it even speaks to, I've now gotten to the point where I'm so convinced on doing what is in front of me that that's what I was doing at the time too, but probably just couldn't articulate it. So whatever was in front of me, which was finishing out the school year and graduating, and then just getting to work.
Which I find interesting. Because I too did not go to college. I was reflecting on how I ended up in a place where most people who go to college would kill for it. They'd be like, this seems like a good ending. This seems like a good sort of landing space. And I think it was similar for me, that because I could not, I had your brother, I had a baby, and there was no having enough money to go. Like I went to UCLA for 5 minutes, and I remember driving to UCLA one night. I was in night school, like just all the quintessential sort of single mom trying to go to college things. And I was like, no, this can't work, because time is a real thing in the life of a single mom. And so going at 6 o'clock at night in the dark, in the fall, over the hill from the Valley to UCLA, like it was just so much. And then it costs money. And when you're a single mother, you don't pay money out. That's not wise. You need to get money. And so I think that because there was no, it was no choice for me. The choice that I made around college, I think I made when I had Caleb, just because of my personality. And I was fortunate enough to have skills, hand-eye skills that I'm still using now, which is astonishing. In so much as being able to braid hair, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stick with what's in front of me. I'm going to make money the way I know how to make money now. I'm going to study the things that light me up now, and God is going to figure out the rest, because I can't keep trying to borrow money to learn things that really just are to make money. And at that point, it definitely was like, I think I was studying PR. And PR was interesting to me because I think I had met a publicist and he seemed cool. And I was like, oh, I could do that. There's a lot of that. Like, oh, I could do that. Never once did I think at that time, who am I? And when I was growing up, there was no who you are is the pathway to what you will do in life. the fact that there are all of these creatives,
especially with no financial support.
Oh yeah. Oh, and that's it. That's the thing. In this socioeconomic sort of stratosphere that I grew up in, there was no parent that said, here's $10,000 to do what you love. No, there was food stamps for food, and there was braiding money for rent, and and I don't say those things like that's a challenge space, because I know full well that being in that space literally kept me looking alive. Like, keep your eyes open and your head on a swivel, because you gotta make it happen. You gotta make it work with what you have in front of you. So paying attention to that, but also not sinking into that, like in a kind of despair way, but saying, no, I mean, this is my current circumstance, but I still love these things and I still have my eye on these things, was super, super helpful for me.
And I feel like I learned to structure my life actually after the education system, because there's no point, like you were saying, sinking into a place. There's no point, unless you're getting held back, that you stay in any particular grade or you stay in any particular place. So as long as you literally keep moving forward, and I think that, that is the balance of entrepreneurship and creating your own schedule and creating your own life and plan for your life, is that you have to be held accountable to it. And there isn't this sort of body or institution that says, these are the things you should do. You literally have to have your own internal power and say, these are the things that I do, and I trust them. Because we could also say about the education system, their plan for children or their plan for their students isn't necessarily what everybody finds to be ideal. So, but they have trust in it. They have a belief in it. There's enough people that believe in it that it keeps going.
As a framework, you mean?
Yeah. And it works for enough people that it still exists. So I think that in your own journey, in my experience, I've just had to learn to build a plan for myself and then try it.
So this week I picked up again in exploring all of the subjects that I'm sort of engaging in right now. I picked up one of the first books that I procured on my own. Like I'm done with school. I actually was in Argentina with Caleb and a friend and his family. And because I'm a book lover, I never went anywhere without a book. I picked up this book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. And it was the first book about the subject of mindfulness that I had ever explored. And so I grabbed that again recently and opened it up to the author, John Kabat-Zinn, talking about how he was invited to do this series of talks at this university. And it was in Arizona, and there was an observatory that he was interested in going to. And he said to the people who were inviting him, schedule me a day to go out to this observatory so I can look in the telescope, because I want to see all the, sort of the space. And they said to him, well, that's not going to be possible, because the telescope is being used all the time by photographers or by, people who are newscasting. Like, it just wasn't a thing people did. It was a prop, frankly, at this observatory where people are supposed to be looking at the sky. And so he said, well, if it's not possible, I'm not going to come. Because that's what my interest is. My interest is in being able to, with my own eyes, see the celestial bodies. And he said they called him back a couple of days later and they had finagled it. Somehow they had made that happen. And so he went there and he looked through the telescope and he saw, like, just God. It's sort of that when people are talking about seeing celestial bodies. And then at some point he realizes, he was looking up and telling the astronomers or whoever's there, oh, I want to see this. Can you turn it this way? I want to see that the room was filling up. And the room was filling up literally with the astronomers and the people who work there, who never, ever, ever got a chance to look through that telescope on their jobs. Like, they work in this place and this is always there, but unavailable. And I was really impressed by his own sort of internal fortitude that's like, no, I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm going to do the things that are for me and that interest me. And while I do want to come to this college and do the things you want me to do, the things that I need to get out of that, are also super, super important. And in doing so, people that had always been in that exact orbit with that exact tool that it seemingly they could have engaged, he was able to allow them an opportunity because of his insistence on doing things the way he needed them done to give them an experience they had never seen. And I feel very, very much like that about the journey that we're on and the way I decided, oh no, I'm going to move in this way. And decided is, it's generous because, again, I don't know that I had a whole bunch of decisions when the decision to finally go to school came in front of me because it wasn't logical. It just wasn't practical. But because I was like, okay, this is the reality. And so we're going to just keep exploring how to learn and how to become in a different way than maybe formal society is doing, that I've been able to help other people see the things that I have been learning all this time. And I loved that. So this is Wherever You Go, There You Are, Mindfulness, Meditation, and Everyday Life by Jon Kabat-Zinn. And the information on the book will be in the show notes for anybody who's interested in picking it up.
Okay, so last week we asked you guys to let us know if you had any questions. So, Mom, do you want to pick one?
Yes. This question says, how do you establish boundaries if you've never done it before?
How do you establish boundaries if you've never done it before? I would say that before, when I was having challenges with boundaries, I just had to identify where I needed to implement the boundaries. And then I just did it. Like, for example, if I need space or if I need time, you have to first identify that that's what it is. Like, okay, maybe it's too much time on my phone, or maybe it's too much time, in conversation with somebody. So you just identify what the challenge is and then draw back from that. I feel like, and then that's where you build the boundary. Like, okay, let's gauge now how much this drawback works. And then wherever it feels comfortable, set it at that point and don't go over that.
That sounds very like a whole practical path. It sounds easy. Is that, how many times do you have to practice that before the boundary is actually set?
Until it's actually set. Like, I don't know. I don't count.
I mean, but it isn't just one and done.
Right.
Okay. No. When you've never set a boundary before, I guess the question exists because it must be a hard thing even as a thought. And so, like you said, I think you do have to think about, what is the boundary I need? What do I need from either myself, like creating a boundary for myself, or creating a boundary for other people? What do I absolutely exactly need? Sometimes you have to write that thing down.
Yeah.
Like, see it on paper. Like, I really need to not have people call me on the phone before I go to work. And then maybe why. That might be valuable. How come this boundary is important? Because once you can, and justify is the word I can grab right now. Once you can explain the boundary, help yourself understand why the boundary is important, I think it gives it a little bit more stickiness. Because then if you have to explain it to people, because I think maybe sometimes that part feels scary. Like, I can say I need space, maybe because I can feel it in my body. But how do I explain to somebody why I need that? So maybe making it clear what you need and why. That way, if you have to be presented with a why from somebody, you have, something to reach for.
Right. And I feel like, when it comes to boundaries, I don't think you owe anybody a why, but I think that with any new habit, the why matters because that's where your intention lies. I feel like sometimes I find myself being interested in, entering into a new habit, entering into a new way of being. And you can be motivated by that in the beginning because it's just the excitement of starting something new. But the why is really what carries you through the intention and solidifies the habit.
I guess the one other thing that I would say about boundary setting, because I know there's a lot of fear around that. I think that when you're for yourself or with another person, again, there's an idea, I think, of loss. Like if I do this, if I set this boundary, what will I lose?
Right.
Not being afraid that what you'll lose will be detrimental. Maybe what you'll lose will make room, like thinking about it in a different way, because the thoughts that we have conjured in our head about doing a thing often are the things that stop us. So basically telling yourself a new thing about the outcome.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining in for this latest conversation. If you want to see the full-length video of this conversation, you can join us on Patreon. And if you are listening on any of your favorite podcast platforms, please review and comment. Give us a shout out. Let us know how you're enjoying this or how you think we're doing. And follow us on Instagram at SovereignUPod. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
My joy is now. Altogether lovely, pleasure and abundance. All things as it should be, pleasure and abundance.